the Doctor Who Alhambra Podcast.
And all I got is, no, you're giving up too soon.
Okay. Real Doctor Who fans.
When did I go? No, I don't. You made me sound like Peter from Family Guy, and that's insulting.
With real Doctor Who opinions.
Oh, sorry. Here's what you're going. You're going, all right, you're giving up too early.
Just...
Hello and welcome to the Dr. Alhambra Podcast, episode 331 of the podcast. I am Brett, going on yet again a solo edition of the podcast. Yes, my friends in crime, the dynamic duo of Liam and Legion, are still lost, but you know what? They will be making an appearance because, you go to undo the Nymon incident, you're guaranteed to cause a ripple effect with your timeline. So I do have a discussion that did take place a couple months ago, but I do think it is kind of relevant to a most recent IGN article revolving around the 14th series or the 14th or the first season or the 40th season, however you'd like to count the most recent Disney Plus BBC venture of Doctor Who. There's an interesting article revolving around Jodie Whittaker and that season, as well as a discussion that occurred months ago revolving around the Jodie Whittaker era, as well as, and what I want to kind of get into at the very beginning is a discussion about the viewing figures for Season 1, Series 14, Season 40 of the Doctor Who TV show. And because I think there's a little bit more complexity that is not being covered. You see everywhere people either laughing or gaslighting that it is either not as bad as you think it is, or it is even worse than you think it is. And I think that somewhere in between, I do think that there is some cause for worry. I will eventually, one of these days, get and do my review for, well, it might be even in this podcast, who knows, where that will take me. But I will eventually get around to reviewing the episodes of Season 14 that I never got around to watching. So that being said, let's sit back, relax, and enjoy. Oh, sorry. If you'd like to email the show, please email the show at alhambraaudio@gmail.com. That is ALHAMBRA audio@gmail.com. You can tweet the show at Alhambra Podcast. DMs are open. That being said, I want to get into first off the viewing figures, because again, I think this is very complex compared to what some are reporting. However, I do think that there is a massive concern that needs to be discussed. And I do want to talk about the part episode 7, episode 8 that was released in the theaters. And keep in mind, there could be a spoiler. The reason why I say could is I'm not sure if it's a spoiler because I haven't watched it yet. So that being said, just, FYI. So first on the docket, I want to talk about the Doctor Who viewing figures. So in keeping, I don't think, and I notice on Twitter, some people are comparing the Survival episode 2 or something like that, one of the lowest ever rated Doctor Who's, because of the overnight figures. They're comparing that with the overnight figures for this show, showing that, in multiple instances that it is, not the lowest. Now, that being said, there's a couple reasons why I think there has to be asterisks by both of them. Yes, this is a true fact. This kind of goes into the whole Babe Ruth 61 home runs. Well, Babe Ruth got 60 home runs. However, Roger Maris got 61 with more games played during the year. Hence, they put an asterisk right by the home run total because it was an unfair advantage. You have with Doctor Who, you have this Survival, which was the lowest, I think episode 2, episode 3, something like that, one of the lowest classic eras viewing figures. And now with the season 1, Series 14, Season 40, series, whatever, question mark, you have multiple episodes that have been below that. And the only one that you can really kind of shout out to for any of them being below that would be the overnight plus the 7 weekly. Now, we have 3 different kinds of figures with New Who provided by Doctor Who. DoctorWhoTV.co.uk, which, according to a couple of people on YouTube, this has been a fan website that has been doing this for over 20 years. And most recently, this most recent season, it has been reported that by Doctor Who TV, that the BBC is slowly, ever so slowly, trying not to release the numbers for the viewing figures. And one has to wonder what's going on. One of my go-to news sites for the podcast is DoctorWhoNews.net. Now, all the way up to this current Season 1, Series 14, Season 40 season, the past, I don't know, since around the Matt Smith era, they would always, DoctorWhoNews.net would constantly give viewing figures and, overnight figures for the Matt Smith, the Peter Capaldi, the Jodie Whittaker era, and update it on their site. The last time that they have updated and given viewing figures was for the Church on Ruby Road, the Christmas special. They did it for all 3 14th Doctor, David Tennant 14th Doctor episodes. However, what you also have to wonder is, why are they not reporting on any of the viewing figures? They're not posting it anywhere on this news site for Ncuti's Season 1, 1440 series. Like, what is going on? Are they not reporting on it because it doesn't look good? It is a massive question that one has to ask, honestly. And in pointing it out does not mean that they're bad people. In pointing it out does not mean that they're good people. It doesn't mean that they are shills. It means, I think a lot of these things are done by Doctor Who fans. If you like something and you really love it, you might start pulling punches. You might start altering or forgetting to cover stuff because you don't want a blemish on the show that you like. There are some YouTubers, podcasters, that don't pull punches, that actually maybe punch too hard or exaggerate the effectiveness of their punch. And I think that there has to be, you have to step back and really dive into the numbers and discuss certain things. Now, over the past couple of years, up until or during the Jodie Whittaker era, I did not have BBC America. Things were not, obviously I'm an American, if you cannot tell through my accent. I would do my impersonation of Legion, but there's nobody to laugh at it, and that just makes it sad. But anyway, all the way up to the Jodie Whittaker era, I was constantly buying the episodes and buying the season pass on iTunes because I did not have a cable package. I did not want a cable package just to get BBC America, just for almost basically one show. And so, obviously my viewing figure did not ever, connect with the BBC America viewing figures. So, there's that. One could also say that perhaps some of the American Doctor Who fans in America who didn't have a BBC America account used a VPN and illegally watched Doctor Who through, their VPN, and it counted as a viewing figure. That could have happened, because one of the things that you have to wonder, not only with the massive drop-off, Doctor Who News not counting or showing the viewing figures, but the amount of drop-off that has gone from the Flux season, the special, and then the David Tennant specials to Ncuti's season is humongous. I'm focusing on the 7-day plus 4 screens, the one that counts multiple watchings, watching it on a TV, watching it on a phone, watching it on an iPad. That's the numbers that I think are the more valuable numbers compared to the overnight. You can't say that the numbers have dropped because Disney Plus now has it. However, you can also say that people in the UK might be, and I know this is a true thing because some of the Doctor Who podcast or YouTubers that I have been watching lately are doing watch-along parties. And the only way that they're getting the watch-along parties is they are watching it through a VPN, through Disney Plus, and that's how they're getting it viewed. Now, you could say, all right, there goes a couple of views or a couple hundred, maybe a couple thousand views. I still think the majority of UK viewers are watching it on the iPlayer. However, according to the data, most people are watching it through the, online appointment viewing, essentially. And the difference between the iPlayer and the overnight is about 1 million, maybe 1.2-ish, 1.4-ish million in difference between the overnight to the 7-day week. And there's nothing wrong with watching it on the iPlayer or 7 days later. I think the biggest problem is going from Jodie's last season, the Flux season, you had the highest, episode 1, the 7-day plus 4, 5.81 million. The David Tennant specials, the highest 7-day plus 4 is the special number 1, the Star Beast, 7.61 million. Then you have Ncuti's season, the highest one was episode 4, and some people are saying there's a huge asterisk by that one because there was a very important football match that went in overtime, and the question is how is a rating, counted? Is it 1 second, 1 minute, 2 minutes? How is a rating counted? So I'm going to go to episode 1 of Ncuti's first season, not the Church on Ruby Road, but Space Babies, 4.01 million. That is a 7-day plus 4 numbers. Now, some people are saying and laughing at that number, or they're laughing at the overnight number, which is 2.60 million, okay? Or 2.6 million, sorry. All right. I give you that because the difference in overnight plus iPlayer plus 7-day viewing is only a difference of 1.4 million. Like, that is not a huge jump. Now, what some are doing, RTD did it in an article, was discussing the fact that, well, what is the 28-day? Now, look at Space Babies, 28 days later. Now, about over 5 million, close to 6 million have watched it because, that's how many people are watching it 28 days later. Okay, but that's not a new fact. That is not a new stat. That stat existed possibly during the Jodie Whittaker era. It possibly existed during the Peter Capaldi era because I'm not 100% sure. I'm 98% sure that the iPlayer always had some of these new episodes that could be streamed whenever you wanted after the, original air date. So if we are commending the additional 1 point something million a month later, why are we not commending or noticing or discussing those numbers? And the reason why I bring that up is because I feel as though RTD is defending his show. The question is why wasn't Chris Chibnall defending his show? because those numbers probably existed. Never brought it up, though. Like, Stephen Moffat could have. I mean, his last couple of seasons with Peter Capaldi, those ratings aren't good. The 7 day plus 40 or 4 are remarkably better for Capaldi's last season. So there's a lot of things to figure out what is true, what is not true, what is being, who is gaslighting who. And again, you could say, well, okay, Disney Plus is stealing viewers. Sure, that could be a possibility. However, the website that is showing Disney Plus numbers, like sometimes the Acolyte has been higher than than Doctor Who for a new streaming service. Doctor Who has either been 8th of the week or not even on the top 10 of the week, with Bluey being number 1. So, who is watching this Doctor Who show? And again, the reason why I bring that up, the reason why I'm discussing all of these factors is because I'm guessing if things don't improve revolving around ratings, because again, and I bring the Acolyte up and also Ahsoka up, because last year when people were making fun of the Ahsoka series on Disney Plus, it was brought out that the Ahsoka episode 1 was the most viewed new streaming service show on Disney Plus for the year. Episode 1 of Ahsoka. Recently, it has come out that the first day of The Acolyte was the highest rated watched show on Disney Plus of the year, Doctor Who having come out before that. Now, both Doctor Who and The Acolyte had 2 episodes drop on the same day. If the Doctor Who numbers were as big as they, some people are expecting or thinking, why has Disney Plus not come out with saying, hey, things aren't as bad? I think the silence is actually, and I'm not talking about, the things that are, hanging from the rafters that I'm forgetting every 2 seconds. The silence from Disney is the message that I think is where the truth is lying. Hence, I know RTD is working on penning together a 3rd season. I'm very curious, cautiously optimistic that the 3rd season is not going to happen and we are going to have a wilderness years. Or at least it's not going to be on Disney Plus. Will that happen? I don't know. But why is Disney Plus not sharing anything? Why is the ratings, it's the highest it generally has ever been on Disney Plus or a new streaming series, is 6th place on one day, and then it immediately drops off. And I've seen on Twitter that some people are saying, well, people are watching shows differently. Now everybody's binging them. Okay. I believe the binge model, though, has been in effect for quite some time. What was the binge model looking like during the Flux season? What was it during season 12? What was it during season 11? What was it during season 10, 8? The binge model has been a thing for the longest time because Netflix had made it popular. So to pull out and saying, well, we're watching TV differently. We've been watching TV differently for over a decade. And people are using numbers for justification. Remember, numbers dictate whether shows are picked up for a 2nd or 3rd or 4th season. I understand that there's more TV out there, there's more streaming services out there, and Doctor Who could be, a victim of so many options. I get that. But at the same time, how can you go from, I'm just going to even say, let's just for example, The Woman Who Fell to Earth, 7 Day Plus 4, almost 11 million. And that is in 2018-19. 4 years later, you have the 60th or the BBC special, 5.6 million on the 7 Day Plus 4 streaming. Then you have the Christmas special, Ncuti's first full appearance, 7.49 million on 7 Day Plus 4, to his first episode, 4.01 on 7 Plus 4. That is 3,000 people that have walked away. I think that there's a lot to consider. I think the viewing figures, there's so many, asterisks by it. There's so many what ifs by it. But I will say, when you have the star, when you have RTD kind of attacking, antagonizing the fans, when you have shows that have so many plot holes. One thing I want to talk about regarding, and again, I have not seen all of season 14 or season 1 or whatnot, but one thing I want to talk about is something that it has been infecting the comic book world for a while. And when we think back about RTD's discussion about wheelchairs and being, seeing them as, you can't have an evil villain in a wheelchair because then people will associate you with, wheelchair users as evil and villainous. The interesting thing about that is possibly, however, the thing that has been infecting comic books for a while, over probably about the past 4 or 6 years, is when people write a comic book villain, some writers are fearful of having the villain do villainous things because it is seen or is worried to be seen that, hey, why did you write it like that? That's kind of messed up when you think about it. Well, do you think that way? Are you a monster? Because you're the one that dreamed up this scenario. When we go back to Space Babies, we had this, I hated that story. It's so stupid. We couldn't kill the booger monster. Why? Because sure, it might have been created whatever plot hole, excuse or whatever, but does RTD worry that if he has this monster killed, that he gives the green flag to murder scary things? We've already taken Davros's wheelchair away. Why? Because he worries that people are going to see wheelchair users as being evil. No, I think he is worried that people are going to think he sees it like that. Because again, in the comic book world, we've had to change villains that are, they're misunderstood. You have that stupid musical, what is it? The Wizard of Oz musical, where now what is it? The one with the Wicked Witch of the West. Anyway, we're now doing backstories to villains so that we can justify why they decided to, homicide a whole bunch of people. You know what? When you think about it, the Munchkins possibly could have deserved it because you know what? Wicked Witch of the West kind of bullied. Like, can't evil people just be evil people? Couldn't they have just made bad decisions? Do we have to have every single villain have a sympathy story? You have the Maleficent story. All right, you have also the 101 Dalmatians story, whatever, the Cruella. You have, there's a reason why she wanted to murder all these puppies. She didn't have a good childhood. You know what? Why couldn't she have just been like, you know what? I really want a jacket, but you know what? I would like it to be made out of puppies. Yeah, just people can be evil. They could either be born that way. Some of these, origin stories are, because of environments. The Idavra story, beautiful story. He wasn't evil because he was in a wheelchair. He was evil because of circumstance after circumstance after circumstance. Beautiful story. Does not just give him the green light for that. Does not basically say, well, the instant he sat, he was perfectly fine. The instant, he got healed or whatnot, he sat in a wheelchair and just went, murder. Oh, this wheelchair is causing me to want to murder people. It just, and so I worry that some of the storytelling elements that some comic book writers and RTD is currently doing, because according to what I've heard, have not watched the, the last episode, the death and whatever. I've heard that, and from what my understanding is after so much death was brought by Sutek, everybody gets reversed alive again, or reversed dead again. And there's no stakes. Did he do that because he's worried that if he killed somebody, that some people would think that he, is okay with mass murder? Like, it's a story. It's TV. It's not real. I was watching a YouTuber that did a, instant car response to the church on, or not the church on Ruby Road, the ballad or whatever, the mystery of Ruby Road, whatever, episode 7, episode 8, that was in the theaters. And he said that there was momentary times where people gasped and sighed, like, in the theater. He said there's 3, he said people seemed to enjoy it, but there was 3 sighs, and they were loud, audible sighs. In the comment section, somebody said that regarding this, reaction of the hundreds of cinema goers at my screening had the end, at the end, would shock the BBC, Bad Wolf, and RTD to their core. Utter silence as we left, and only negative reactions, expletives, and explanations for Ruby and the snow. The atmosphere was that of a wake compared to the excitement at the interval. So from episode 7 to episode 8, the reaction and the tone of the moviegoers changed immensely. I can't say that because I wasn't there. I can only go by people who claim that they were there or were live streaming after they were done and walking to their car or whatever. I think there's a massive problem with New Who. For me, New Who, unless there can be some alterations of this stupid regeneration with this stupid, what is it? They did the memory TARDIS. I haven't watched Tales of the TARDIS. It's not available on Disney+. I do have access to them, but if you're going to make something part of Doctor Who canon, shouldn't it be viewable by everybody instead of just a select few in a region? I understand that there is some specialness because of, who did it and who's making it. But if you're banking on it being part of canon and continuity, like that's why Big Finish can be seen as, not officially canon, because, you'd have to buy it or listen to the podcasts. So I think there's a lot of problems going forward with the series of Doctor Who. I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What's your worries? What's your concerns? Do you think that there could possibly be a Wilderness Years Part 2 after Season 2 of Ncuti Gatwa's 15th Doctor? I don't know. Email the show at alhambraaudio@gmail.com. Tweet the show at Alhambra Podcast. DMs are open. And then I want to end the episode with this. I'm going to read an article from IGN, and I'm going to play a conversation with myself, Liam, and Legion that we did back in November of 2023, because I think it's quite interesting. So during the Jodie Whittaker era, we had a lot of people basically coming to the defense, claiming sexism for not liking the show and misogyny, whatnot, or whatever. And I looked through IGN to see if there was at least their articles that they were writing were inconsistent to this. Now, I have not come across an IGN article that trashed the Whittaker era. I have not seen one, or at least until this one, I've not seen one that really came to the defense. Now, the question is, did they delete anything? I don't know. I went to the Wayback Machine. I tried to find as many as I could, read as many as I could. The only thing I could find regarding the IGN articles are the people that were commenting on them. And the most standard comment back from 2019 all the way to 2022 in some of these IGN Doctor Who Jodie Whittaker articles is, she's a good actress, the scripts sucked, too many companions, the pacing, and the lore change. So many things were going on. Most other companies or whatever always had the era Jodie Whittaker, Chris Chibnall's back and saying, everything is fine, it's the fans that are the problem. So we get this one from IGN, which came out on the 25th of June, 2024. And it says, for the first time of showrunner RTD's second tenure on Doctor Who is now wrapped up. After a season finale with plenty of sci-fi wackiness and emotional payoff for the 15th Doctor and his companion Ruby Sunday, we can finally look back at how the overall season compares to its predecessor. Doctor Who, of course, has been a British cultural staple since 1963, but gained more of a worldwide audience with the 2005 relaunch. I would actually disagree. It exploded near the very end of David Tennant's era and continued to, the explosion continued on during the Matt Smith era and then kind of slowly fell off the face of the earth with the Capaldi era. Anyway, it says, after so many ups and downs over the past 20 years, how is the show faring in its latest iteration? Quite well, all things considered. Okay, well, we just barely discussed various, asterisks and ponderings regarding the viewing figures. I think quite well, all things considered is a very interesting sentence right there. After the frankly dreadful... Now, here is the interesting part of this article, because I don't think that this would be worded this way if Jodie was still in charge and Chibnall had moved on. It says, after the frankly dreadful era overseen by producer Chris Chibnall, which preceded Davies' return, the haphazardly assembled final season under Stephen Moffat. Now that's interesting, because I thought, that season was kind of a tad bit better in quality before that. Season 14 has been a massive step up in quality. I would disagree with that from the episodes that I've seen. It is not perfect, obviously. Nothing is perfect. Nothing is perfect. Here's my favorite thing. There's so many people that dissect, discuss, and mock some of these, season 14 episodes. And you know what? They are welcome to do it. However, if you really are honest and are not afraid of the blemishes, do it to the classic series. Do it to the 2005, 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 era stories. It is only fair to, if you're going to mock certain things and try to find holes and do some sarcastic comments, to do it to those. Because the blemishes are there. Now, are there more blemishes? Are there issues? Yes, I just talked about a lot of issues. And go back to, I believe I have a rant. Maybe one of these days, maybe in this episode, I'll put the rant in at the very end of this from episode 302 of the podcast. And this, again, 302 was done in November of 2023, before we even saw Ncuti on the screen. was my concern. I still stand by it. Anyway, so where was I? It's not perfect, and we'll examine where it could improve a little later. But Gatwa's first season as the Doctor is the first time in years that Doctor Who has felt like it had a purposeful direction. Subtitle, Unlucky number 13. It says, it's not much of a hot take to say that before RTD's return for the second time as showrunner, Doctor Who was stuck in something of a rough spot. Well, that's interesting, because RTD decided to take that rough spot that Chris Chibnall left him in and decided to, plunge forward. Now, I know some people are in RTD we trust, and I am under the strong belief, that just because it was done doesn't mean it shouldn't be undone. One of the discussions that people have had regarding comic books is, and certain runs on, for example, characters like Daredevil, people will do stuff, build certain things up and kind of almost break the character and then bring them back to where the character originally started, passing the character on to a new creative team, a new writer. And then that character will put them through the ringer, do this, almost break the character, maybe even break them, but then return them back to where they were. Whereas Chris Chibnall broke the character of Doctor Who, changing the canon, changing the lore, and then basically being like, and then having RTD go and say, yeah, not only do I like that, I'm not going to change it. I'm going to double down on it. And I'm going to do by regenerations, which is stupid when you think about it. Because where the heck was he when Sutekh, where was the 14th Doctor when Sutekh was destroying everything? Guess couldn't be bothered. Anyway, let's see. Moffat's tenure as showrunner is divisive among fans, but the fan favorite installment, Heaven Sent, which was part of the wrap-up for the 12th Doctor and Clara Oswald's relationship in season 9, was the last time the show delivered a truly excellent episode. That's interesting. Moffat originally believed the 2015 Christmas special, The Husband of River Song, would be his farewell to the show, and that special still feels like the most appropriate series finale Doctor Who will ever likely have, tying off loose ends and giving the Doctor and his wife River a happy ending. But Moffat stayed for one more season, and everything went downhill from there. I don't like Bill. I don't like the character Bill. I think that's very inconsistent. I will own that, not popular opinion, but you just go back to the original podcast where I said the same thing. I'm not, I am nothing but consistent. Not that season 10 didn't have its charms, like Pearl Mackey's performance as Bill, or the first time multiple versions of the Master shared the screen. That was a joy. But Moffat had clearly exhausted all of his big ideas in earlier seasons. Chibnall taking over only made everything worse. Can't believe they actually admitted to that. The 3 seasons almost completely bereft of the quality we'd seen in earlier eras. Pretty much the only good thing in the run was Jodie Whittaker's performance as the Doctor, with the Broadchurch alum doing everything in her power to wrestle something workable out of the dire script she was given. I'm glad that we can agree that the scripts were dire. I wish more people would have actually seen it. Seen the scripts being dire, not trying to, like it because of worry, concern of misogyny. I think that was weird. Many fans were happy to see a woman finally take on the iconic role after so many years, but sadly the 13th Doctor era is one of the weakest in the show's history. Oh, ouch. From an array of flat and uninteresting companions, ouch. Hey, I'd take that back. Dan, I like Dan. I like Bradley Walsh's character. No, the other two, yeah, sure, flat and uninteresting. Wood. Sorry, I meant to say Ryan. Sorry, why did the word wood come out of my... I don't know, that's weird. dialogue driven far more than exposition, than character, the Doctor becoming a conservative-minded individual who defends the status quo and massive unneeded retcon. If you're going to say massive unneeded retcons to series mythology, the Chibnall era would... Okay, so the Chibnall era would have likely killed any other show. What... how can this IGN writer actually dare say that? Because RTD has doubled down on some of those unneeded retcons to the series mythology and also added his own. Are we watching the same show? Anyway, but Doctor Who is too big to even meaningfully go away. And with Disney Plus, we begin to take over the international distribution. A revamp of the series was all but assured. Thankfully, Doctor Who is already showing significant signs of improvement. Please show me where the signs are, because of the 4 episodes that I've seen of the Ncuti Gatwa era, 1 was good. Not great, good. And the others I do not like. Sam I am. And it all starts with giving the new era a solid foundation. So I think that's quite interesting that they basically trashed the Jodie Whittaker era and the Chibnall era. But, to IGN's credit, I have not been able to find a single article where they defended the era while it was happening. There are many places, there's many blogs, there's many, news articles that were written defending the era as it was happening. It was, the fans are just misogynists or whatever. Now you have this one. Whoever wrote this, let's see, who wrote this? Carlos Morales. So for trashing, if this article was written a couple of years ago, he'd be labeled a misogynist and a sexist for trashing the Jodie Whittaker era. He did kind of come to its defense, kind of, or just her defense as not a bad actor or actress. But still, I think that's quite interesting. Anyway, I'm going to play this from a November discussion. Exactly.
Come on, do it for Uncle Ross.
Yeah.
So I want to share something with you that I've been monitoring. Saw it last week while me and Liam were podcasting, and I didn't say anything because I was kind of curious what was going to happen. And it is hysterical because I'm monitoring it right now. There is... Oh, God. I don't know if this person is a new Who fan or not, but on Twitter, they constantly are having these polls, and they are trying to figure out, it's, Doctor Who Rankings 2023. I want you to see if you can notice what they're doing. I'm not going to tell you the results, but I want you to see if you can see what they're doing. So, Witchfinders versus Mythmakers. Revolution of the Daleks versus Terror of the Vervoids. Rosa versus the Runaway Bride. Shada versus Rosa. Into the Dalek versus Revolution of the Daleks.
Ugh.
What do they all have in Curse of Paladin versus Power of the Doctor.
Did you notice the 13th Doctor era?
Yeah, the all 13th Doctor era.
Yeah, they're all some other story versus a 13th Doctor era. And in every poll, every single 13th Doctor story loses. Mythmakers beat Witchfinders. Terror of the Vervoids beats Revolution of the Daleks. Runaway Bride beats Rosa. Shada
really
beats Rosa. Into the Dalek beats Revolution. Let's see. The most recent one that I was monitoring. So Pirate Planet destroys Power of the Daleks. And let's see. Currently, the Sartaran stratagem is beating Revolution of the Daleks. The End of the World beats Rosa. The Chase beats Rosa. The Invisible Enemy beats Into the Daleks. Revolution of the Daleks. Leisure Hive beats Rosa. TV movie 68% to 31% over Rosa. Like, nobody is voting for the 13th Doctor series.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting. It's very telling.
Yep.
I think if that poll had been done a year ago, you would have seen people go, "Oh yeah, 13th Doctor." But now,
Nope. Very true. All right. Well,
it's been less than it's been less than a year, and you can tell that the era has not aged well. And if that's 1 year down, what's that going to be like in 10 plus years?
It's going to be near forgettable, which I actually am very excited for.
Yeah.
So that discussion occurred in about November 20-ish era of 2023. Again, that is what was going on Twitter at the time. I think that the IGN article is quite interesting when you think about it, as well as kind of certain things that are going on currently with Doctor Who. Now, keep in mind that, anybody can like anything, anybody can dislike anything. It is perfectly fine. You do not have to come up with labels as to why they are not liking certain things or why they are liking certain things. I like the Doctor Who and the Invasion of the Dinosaurs. I know it is awful. I know Legion really likes the Underwater Menace and also the Space Pirates. And of course, Liam's favorite, with the highest score that Liam has ever given any Big Finish audio ever, with about a 6.5, maybe even a 7. His favorite Big Finish range of all time, A Minuet in Hell. Of course, we all have our things that are not good, and we really enjoy them a lot. That being said, just take some of this discussion with a grain of salt, but we would also like to hear from you. Please email the show at alhambraaudio@gmail.com. You can tweet the show at Alhambra Podcast. DMs are open. Please stay tuned for up-and-coming podcasts. I do have a list that is going to be coming out. I'm going to eventually do a retrospective of Ncuti Gatwa's first season as the Doctor, my thoughts, criticism of the episodes that I've watched, and so forth. Also probably dissecting my discussion and rant from episode 30 of the Doctor Number Podcast. Not 30, 301. 30. I don't know what rant I did back then. It'd probably be fun, though, to listen to. Anyway, that being said, thanks again for downloading and listening. We do appreciate it. Please email the show at contact at reach out. If you email the show, there's a 100% chance that it'll be read and discussed. So please, I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. Thank you for watching, maybe possibly to subscribing on the Doctor Who Alhambra YouTube channel, where these are posted in a podcasting section of YouTube. Maybe one of these days I need to do an actual video, because I've noticed like the 10 Dog Podcast has a pretty big, has a pretty good size audience on YouTube. And maybe we can get our audience also on there, or add to our audience on there. Anyway, maybe you could share how you listen to the podcast. Again, email the show, tweet the show, DM the show. And until next time, I will see you in time. You have been listening to the Doctor Who Alhambra Podcast. Doctor Who is owned and trademarked by the BBC. Doctor Who Alhambra is not affiliated with the BBC or Big Finish. No infringement is intended. Visit our website at alhambrapodcast.weebly.com, or email the show at alhambraaudio@gmail.com. Tweet us at Alhambra Podcast. That is ALHAMBRA Podcast. Thank you.